myself fully in a moment. I am speaking to you right now from Southern California. By the way, does everybody here from knows Robert? Have you guys met him? He spoke to the group, Robert Chairman?
Sure, sure.
Sure. Okay, so because it's kind of funny as a it's just a warm-up story. As we get we let the few more people to join. About 10 years ago, so I've been in the States for 20 years, and I've been doing real estate for 22 years or 23 years. I started in Israel, and about 10 years ago in my business, I feel a little bit stuck or kind of not sure what direction to take. And my wife goes, so I tell her, I think I need a mentor. I think I need someone. And she goes, who's the person? And I was like, you know what? There's this guy I've been seeing on the different real estate investment stages around the country, events that I've attended, I'm talking about somewhere about 20 years ago to 10 years ago. And this guy is not the most known, but I was always impressed by him. His name is Robert Chairman. I didn't even know he's Jewish. And she says, so call him up. And I'm like, nah, come on. You know what? I can't remember how I found his email. I was able to kind of reach out to him. Exactly the same time he was just starting working with the Project X people team. They didn't even call it Project X at the time. It was really, really the infancy period of Project X. I'm talking about 10 years ago. For some reason, he thought I'm Israeli, so I must be connected to them. And I'm like, I'm not, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, long story short, Robert being Robert, it probably took me 9 months to get a time to speak to Robert. Only 9 months, right? Of chasing him down, the way this guy runs around. And we speak. And he did kind of mentor me on the real estate business side for about a year, maybe a little bit less than a year. And the one thing that was nice is during that year, we became good friends. So Robert and I have a pact that anytime we are next to each other geographically, we make sure we call, we text, we go have dinner, go have coffee, whatever. So every time he comes to the Southern California area, hey, Danny, I'm here next week. Join me. Let's have dinner. Bring your wife. Let's have coffee. So actually, I spoke to Robert. We're just catching up about 3 weeks ago. I think we're just 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So every once in a while, we talk. And then one day I talked to him, and always like, okay, where are you right now? That's always the conversation about, where are you right now? And he's like, oh, I'm at my mom's in Nashville, and I'm just at the backyard. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of funny. I'm kind of started working with this guy in Atlanta. He's originally from Nashville. And he goes, is he a Jewish guy? I say, yeah, he is. What's his name? I say, his name is Adi. And he says, oh, Adi what? I said, Adi Weissman. And he says, Adi Weissman, hang on a second. I'm actually in my mom's backyard looking over. I can see his parents' house. So I had an Israeli moment with Robert in the US, something that we don't always experience. So that was nice to see. So just a funny little story. And I see that a lot of people are joining and still joining. So should we start? Should we?
Yes, we can start.
We can start. Do you want to give me a permission to share my screen, my presentation?
1 second. How do I do that? Sure. Which one should I share with you? One second.
Okay, no problem. You should have, oh, you know what? If you click on the dots next to my name, the 3 dots on the top on my video, it should maybe give you the option to make me a host, or you have to open the participant box, participants, and then right click my name, and it says give make a host or something like that, or co-host.
Okay, and now do it, Dani.
Perfect. Okay, let me put my video. Hang on a second. Sorry, my screen. I think I am at the wrong one. Excuse me. Now, let's see. Hang on,
We can
please.
we can see.
Yeah,
We
I
can
just
see.
want to make sure. Sorry, guys. Okay, I just want to see if there's a way for me to. Yes, so I am able to see the chat. So that's good. And participate, I'm gonna. Okay, all right. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone, and thanks for taking the time. My name is Dani Beit-Or. I'm based in Southern California, based in the US for the past 20 years. Probably you've guessed, maybe detected that the accent, and maybe you even recognize that the accent, that I'm originally from Israel. I moved to the States in 2004. Robert Shemin is a good friend. I was just giving the story how we got together and stayed good friends. And through the friendship with Robert, maybe 2017, I believe, I am visiting in Israel. Robert and I haven't spoken for maybe a year or two, and I see that he's speaking. I come to the event in Universitat Tel Aviv, and Robert being Robert, we haven't talked for a while, and I'm at the reception, and all of a sudden he comes out, and he looks at me, he's like, what are you doing here? I can't believe you're here. I just spoke to the guys here about you. Like, come on, I gotta introduce you. And he introduced me at the time to Erez, Gilad, and Orit, the founders of Project X, and a friendship formed around that event. And then they actually visited a few months later, Southern California. We had dinner together. And in 2017, I get invited to speak for the alumni group in Tel Aviv, for the Project X alumni group. I give a talk, something on the business of real estate, not the real estate per se, like behind the scene, and maybe something that if you guys want to do in the future, we can definitely talk about that as well. And after the talk that took about, 2 hours, it's kind of maybe 10 p.m. or something like that. And I'm standing there and people will come and talk to me afterwards. And this is the first time I'm speaking to this group. I know of them. I don't know exactly what they're doing. I know bits and pieces. And one after another, for the next 2 hours after my talk, people come up to have a chat. And one after another, they're telling me, oh, hey, I bought those 2 houses here, or I'm flipping this house here, and all in the States, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And I am used to speaking in events. I've been speaking, in events in the US for more than 10 years, 15 years, probably more. Different, in the real estate investment clubs and webinars and expos and different events. And then I'm used to people coming up to me and they're talking to me about theoretical investing. So 9 out of 10, they talk. One is actually doing. And I'm standing in this hotel in Tel Aviv, and there's people who are coming and having those short, intimate conversation, 5, 6, 7 minutes. And I'm at the end of it, like, what did just happen here? It's the first time I'm in such situation, and 9 out of 10 people are actually taking action, doing something. They're not just talking theoretically about investing, they're actually investing. And automatically at that point, I kind of fell in love with the program. Without being a part of the program, I just fell in love with what they're able to accomplish. I'm so used to people not, talking about it and not walking the talk. They're just talking about it. And all of a sudden, there's something completely people are doing, taking action, not necessarily doing many properties, which is fine, but actually doing. So you guys are part of this program. I don't know how long have you been. I've heard about this program here in New York for quite some time from Erez, but I don't know how long have you guys have been doing. or actually investing or not, and we'll maybe have some time to talk about it. But I think that as an outsider observer has a lot of experience watching programs, I was blown away by how this group is accomplishing so much. So at that point, I told myself, these guys, I like what they're doing. I like the fact that they're taking action. And if I can help this community by any means, so I'll be happy to do so. And I've been doing a lot of seminars and webinars and lectures and different things for the past probably 6-ish years with the Project X in Israel. So I'm very happy that you're making my life a little bit easier, staying in the US time and not the in Middle East time. So that's actually a benefit for me. What I wanted to do for tonight is actually touch on different topics, different subjects as investors, and not necessarily like maybe more like skills and mindset, and create value in what is around investment or part of the investment, and not necessarily talk about a specific niche like Airbnb or rentals or anything like this. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring for tonight. I will couple of things that I want to say. I love having a conversation with those events. Sometimes it's challenging to have the conversation while holding while speaking at the Zoom. So if I'll see something on the chat, I'll try to pick on it and maybe answer on the spot. If not, I'll leave enough time to have, I don't call it a Q&A, I call it a Q&C, questions and conversations. And what I've learned over the past year or two, once the presentation is over, if you're up for it and you want to stay and we can have a chat, not just a Q&A, and then I can maybe get to know you a little bit more, I'll be happy to do so. So I'm in no rush. I know I'm 3 hours behind you. So I just wanted to give you that kind of general context of things. I want to officially introduce myself. My name is Dani Beit-Or. I've been investing in US real estate since 2002, while being a young engineer working for Israeli high tech in Tel Aviv. Started by buying my first rental property remotely, sight unseen, in a period of time that Google was a startup. There was no Zillow, no public records. Property information was delivered in a poorly scanned PDF that was probably originated in a fax machine, if you guys even remember that. So that's as much the quality of the information that we were seeing. Black and white, of course. You can not always make all the numbers. And I just made sense to me after spending a year or two investing in stocks and option and not being happy about the results or the risk rewards. I kind of got introduced to US real estate while in Tel Aviv, bought my first rental property. It did okay. Actually, it did very well, much more than I expected over the long run. I did 2 other small syndication investments. And in 2004, my wife and I just packed our bags and moved ourselves with our suitcases to California. And I started with a clear purpose. I wanted to immerse myself in real estate. I wanted to be surrounded by real estate. I wanted to do it professionally. I think there was already a part of me that said, one day I want to be able to teach others, to be a mentor, or to be someone who leads others with investment and help impact their financial life. That was kind of a wish. It took a while to get to. It took some time to get to that point. And I continued investing, buying few more houses, and started working with other investors, helping them do exactly what I was already doing myself. Mainly what I've been doing for the past 20 years primarily is long-term residential rentals, single family, duplexes, fourplexes. For the most part, I've done other things as well, but those are the majority in different US metros. So since 2004 until now, we've helped clients buy somewhere around 5,000 properties in maybe 45 US metros. If you don't mind, okay, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure nothing If someone can respond, I can hear you, just to make sure I'm not on mute myself.
Danny, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now I see your videos. Thank you. And over those years, we've helped clients buy long-term rental properties in over 45 different US metros. Been doing it before the crash of 2008, during the crash of 2008, after the crash of 2008, before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. So been doing it for quite some time. I've also done about 100 flips in different US metros as well. So this is just to show you, we started tracking the properties that our clients are buying probably about 10 years ago or so. We started actually tracking them. So you can see red mark is a rental property. Blue mark is a flip property. And I believe not all the properties are here. We're probably missing a few that we kind of neglected to update our list. Okay, I want to give you a little warning here. Okay, my first warning is that I really try to put time and energy in preparing for any presentation, because I really value the people. I always, in my mind, the people that are attending, even if there is no fee associated, if there is or isn't, there's still a fee of time. So I want to make sure nobody walks away and like, okay, I just wasted an hour or two of my life with no value. So I really try to bring value. Also, if you are for some reason expecting some sort of a sales pitch at the end, I apologize, no sales pitch whatsoever. So I'm going to give you a gift at the end, truly a gift. If you wanna use it, no sales pitch whatsoever. So just be aware of that. And also, everything in this presentation except one photo, only one photo, was generated by AI. Everything else is DI, based on real experience, real life experience, and not any AI format. Okay, probably gonna get around to that later with some resources. This is the gift I'm going to give you at the end to show you how to, 3 gifts actually, how to access that if you are patient. Okay. I want to talk about different topics that I saw. We have clients, when we meet with new clients for the first time, we ask them to complete an intake form. Part of the intake form is an open question. What are your concerns? Say, I tapped into that as a preparation for this presentation. I tapped into that list. We have, I don't know, 15, 16, 1700 lines of answered. So I wanted to see what are the top things that people keep asking about. And I said, okay, let's tackle those things if we can, because obviously those are of the burning matters or the burning things. So I want to start with number 1 is what I call how to reduce your risk in making an investment decision. Okay. And the way I look at making investment decisions, any type of investment decisions, I should say, or at least real estate wise, is the following. When we are making an investment decision, I consider to make that investment decision, we are making probably, let's just say 20, maybe 15, maybe 25 important decisions. Not insignificant decisions, not critical decisions, but important decisions. So there is some importance to every one of those decisions. So it's like everyone, it's like my investment decision, right? Not my property, sits on multiple pillars. Each one of those pillars is one important investment decision. Those are the pillars that are supporting my decision. For example, an assumption what the rent would be, an assumption what the appreciation would be, and a decision which metro to buy, a decision which property manager to use, which segment of the market, and so on and so forth. So you see, every one of those decisions, I didn't put all 20 of them, or it's not, I'm using 20 as a loose number. I didn't put all those decisions here. I wanted to focus and give you an example that every one of those decisions is important, right? We cannot, dismiss any of them as insignificant. But because we have 20 pillars, right, in my example, and let's say out of the 20 pillars that are supporting my decision, 4 of them did not pan out as we were planning, right? So let's just say the rent is not what we thought, or the cash flow is not what we thought, or even the property manager is not a good property manager, turns out to be. It just means that 4 out of the 20 pillars did not pan out as we were expecting. 16 other pillars are still, or maybe even more, are still supporting my decision, right? So it's important to give enough importance to any one of those decisions in making the determination where to buy, who to use, which resources, realtor, property manager, etc. Absolutely. But it's not like if we missed one of them, everything is catastrophic. It's probably not catastrophic. It can only be catastrophic if we really ignore the significance of all of them combined, right? If we are just buying blindly, maybe that's where everything can tumble down. But if we're just making good decision, it will all support our decision-making process. And even when 4 out of the 20 did not pan out exactly like we were expecting, that doesn't mean it completely, crumbled down. So for example, we may anticipated the rental to be 1,500. In real life, it so happens it's, 1,300 or 1,200, right? So it's not zero, it's just went below what we were planning on. So it's not completely crashing it down. So it's also important to understand that when we're making investment decisions, what I tell my clients all the time, we mainly buy long-term rentals. I tell them right up front, there is no such thing as a perfect property. It does not exist, right? It's all about compromises between multiple factors, right? So it's, for example, we're never going to have a house exactly for the price we want, for the cash flow that we want, at the age that we want, in a condition that we want. It just doesn't exist, right? What we will have, okay, we want it 1990 or after, it's 1895, the age of the year. Okay, not terrible, but not exactly. We want it 1,500 square feet. This is 1,200. Not ideal, but not too far. So that's what I'm trying to make you understand, that there is no perfect property. There is no single reason to make a decision upon. So I see sometimes people tell me, oh, I only focus on the rent, I only focus on the age, it doesn't work like this. There's multiple factors working together. We need to let them balance, or try to balance them quite a lot, in order to find the most suitable one out of the options that we have. So if you're focusing on one item, if you're focusing on one factor, you're probably not doing justice to yourself. And if you're afraid of making a decision just because you're not sure about everything, it's okay to not know exactly what the rent is, but to have other factors that are kind of maybe could mitigate. So if you're making a guess on the rent, but everything else you're more comfortable with, you know what? That's okay. You're just saying, I don't know it, but I made multiple other decisions, support my decision by multiple other factors that I know that I feel comfortable with, right? So that's very important to keep in mind. I want to talk about the other thing that people mention is vacancies, right? People, like, when we talk about rental properties, vacancy is a big thing that comes up. And I have to tell you that I have completely let's just say reimagine or restructure how we go about handling turn of rental properties. So in the past, or we still do, the way we operate, we have property managers in every market, and they handle management and they handle leasing. The leasing function is performed currently with the property managers. The property manager, almost all of them, or all of them, I should say, have a clear protocol how to process a turn from when a tenant moves out until a new tenant moves in. They typically, almost always, operate in a series. One task has to be completed before I can start, the next task, and so on. So, for example, typical MO of a property manager is tenant moves out, The tenant moves out. We, a day or two later, send our listing agent to do the walkthrough to make sure what's the condition of the house. Then we know if we need to call a vendor A, vendor B, and then have the vendor come over, put the bid together, send the bid to the owner, approve the owner, negotiate, maybe have another vendor come out and give another bid or something like that. Then work starts, work gets finished, then we can take photos, then we can list it for a list, and then wait for the tenant, right? So very much, this is how I've been operating with the property managers for 20 years. No more. We are in the midst of changing how we operate completely with managing rental properties. And what I've done is I've taken all those tasks, broke them down into individual tasks, identified them, right? And then I said, okay, why does one have to wait for the other, right? And I started putting those tasks together in a way that many of them are going to be done, completed, or at least partially completed before my current tenant moves out. So a lot of the things I started identifying that we can do it in parallel and not one after the other, and also push them earlier in the process. I already know that the tenant is moving out. I already know the move out day or the estimated move out day. How about some of the things I do sooner before they move out and rather later? Now, if you're listening to this conversation of what I'm saying, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's nothing new. That just makes perfect sense, right? Well, you'll be surprised if you work with property manager to find any one of them who operates like this. When I go to my property managers and I have a tendency to challenge them and I say, listen, why don't you do it this way and that way? They have their own MO, and usually the answer is, Danny, we can't really tell what the condition of the property is before the tenant moves out, and only then we can actually start the work, etc., etc. And you know what? They're absolutely right. I don't argue with what they're saying to be incorrect. My challenge to them, and that's where usually I lose them, is like, Mr. Property Manager, I do not argue with you about how you operate if it serves you correctly. But this is not 20% of the time or 30% of the time, they will behave exactly like you mentioned. You have to wait for the tenant move out and then do everything. What about the 70% other times? Is it possible to mute the person who's speaking? I can actually, okay.
Done.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna lower my volume, just if you don't, yeah, just in case. Okay, sorry about that. So what I've done is I actually now switch to a new way of managing properties, and I am bringing in, I call it listing specialist. I tell them, this is how we want to operate. Are you okay with that? With the clear goal of reducing vacancy time dramatically, right? Vacancy time dramatically. And all those listing specialists that's what they do. They're like, are you joking? This is, of course, this is how we operate. This is not, what you're telling us is maybe a little different than how we operate, but it's pretty much how we operate. So as of now, we are completely changing the way we've been operating with managing properties, using listing specialists, and in the process now started measuring how much vacancy we're gonna be reducing, and I'm looking or aiming for something around 70% reduction in vacancy. So that means instead of a month, we'll go down to a few days. And those days will probably be just a few days between one moves out and the vendor to come in and do whatever they need, and actually ideally have a tenant, not always going to happen, but many times already lined up and ready and waiting, basically waiting for the vendor to finish cleaning or painting or doing whatever needs to be done on the turn. Okay. Next item that we always comes up, sorry about that, is how to avoid, and I'll come back in a moment, how to avoid we'll get there. Perfect. How to avoid problematic tenants. So there's two ways I consider how to avoid problematic tenants. Method number one is kind of simple, and it's very much, where are you buying the property? Are you buying a property in an area that is, by definition, will attract problematic tenants, maybe with people that have harder time paying the rent? Then you know what? You should expect more challenges with tenants. This is not about making a judgment if this is good or bad. It's just making an observation. This is the reality. So you can go to challenging tenants and with area with more challenging tenants, and you will have more challenge with tenants, and you're still going to make money. You just have to come more prepared mentally, financially, to know what you're getting yourself into. So filter one is area, neighborhood selection will dictate the profile of the tenants and potentially the problems that are going to come with it. It's not about right or wrong or do or not to do. It's just understanding how the reality of that works. The second thing is proper screening. Proper screening. Now, I think, it doesn't say, about 3 years ago, I actually had one of my property managers come and do a podcast with us, and I told him, I don't want you to talk about the middle. I want you to talk about the before and after. Before a tenant moves in and when they're ending their lease or around that time. Everybody talks about the management stuff. You know what? Let's not talk about this one for once. Let's just do something a little bit different. And we started the conversation with how the importance of doing proper vetting, which may be obvious to people, but you know what? I'm not sure everybody really understand how critical that is. So vetting the tenant properly, fully. There are multiple ways how to go about it, different tiers and different levels, but it's really, it can be more comprehensive or less comprehensive, but there are multiple things you can do in order to make sure you're getting the right person in or minimizing the chance of having issues. In our ecosystem, my company, it's called Simply Do It. We have today about 1,000 properties in our ecosystem, rental properties, or getting close to 1,000 right now. We don't have a lot of evictions. We do, but we don't have a lot of them. Part of it is the fact that there's a strong vetting done at the beginning.
He took his head
towards the end, when we have issues, when I said the end, when we were starting to have issues, possible issues,
against a wall.
we were, the property manager and I were having conversation about, how to deal with
So he
preventing
really,
eviction and dealing with the tenant, communicating when they stop paying and stuff like that. And while we were having this conversation, he kept referring to, hey, remember how at the beginning we talked about the vetting?
So
if we didn't do proper vetting, this is where this is where we are.
Can I interrupt? Someone's mic is on. I can't hear anything.
So I put the link here if you want to kind of hear about the screening and eviction parts of conversation with the property manager. You're most welcome. The link is right there to better understand those two segments and the importance of them.
And he could tell my son, you'll never get married.
Always, the number one tool was.
Excuse me, someone is interrupting. Can someone please mute himself?
By going to neighborhoods that will attract certain crowd, a certain crowd, and just by doing that, it will be self-filtering, and then we have to filter, a bit or screen some more, but very likely that we will avoid problematic tenants to begin with. Okay. Now I want to talk about where to buy and what to buy. Where to buy and what to buy. And what I want to I want you guys to think of is not necessarily, I don't want to tell you which investment to do or not to do. I want you to think about it a little bit differently. So a lot of the places that we go online, and maybe Project X talks about it as well. Everybody talks about what's your buy box and what you like and what kind of property, and it's a long-term rental, short-term rental, single family, duplex, multifamily. Okay, that's a buy box, no problem. you know what? I'm going to put the buy box aside and I want to talk about the personality box. And that's where a lot of people don't take the time, right? Sometimes they tend to kind of follow the herd or not sure, and they're not really asking themselves, am I buying the proper investment for myself? Now, one of the things that I want my clients to do, and I wish for you as well, if you buy the correct property, and for me, the correct property is the property or investment that will help you succeed, or I should say, reduce the chances of failing, you will do better over the long term. And what I mean is sometimes people choose the wrong type of investment, right? And because of that, they end up not succeeding, maybe losing, maybe not losing, but not doing well. And they're like, wait, so I came out of that. Let's just say I chose a flip. I did a flip. It was horrible. You know, I didn't make any money. And then I'm like, oh my God, I spent hours and time and energy and dealing and I made nothing. Well, I did learn something along the way. So the tuition was not cheap, but at the same time, I didn't succeed. You know what? I'm stepping away from real estate. And that for me is the biggest failure, not failing in a transaction, but failing in a situation that, you know, you move away and you say, this is not good, investment. So ask yourself maybe some questions. What kind of an investment you should do based on your personality? Are you a beginner or experienced? Are you a tight on schedule, or you have some time, right? You can spend more time. Like you need something more passive or active. Don't think of passive or active as two milestones. It's a scale, right? You can be a little bit more active, a little bit more passive. Your personality, are you kind of a control freak and you want to be involved in all the details, or you actually want to let things go and kind of let others do some of the heavy lifting? There's no right or wrong here. There's only asking yourself what is more relevant for your personality, for your skill, for your availability, for your attention span. I have a good friend who lives here in Southern California. She is a big real estate investor, been doing it for a long time. And every time we meet, she knows I'm in real estate. She always, sit down and she wants to pick my brain and get as much information as possible and benefit, see how she can benefit. And that's okay. She's a good friend. But she tells me, I don't understand how you're able to invest out of state without seeing the properties. I am such a control freak. I have to be able to get in the car and drive to my properties and see them. I just cannot, comprehend the idea of investing remotely. And that's okay. That's not for her. I know that. By the way, I would never want her as my client because I like her as a friend, but she would drive me nuts because she would want to be involved in every detail. Few years ago, I used to do flips. I don't do it anymore. I've done it for a few years. And one of the clients from San Francisco, she saw one of the flips that we're about to do, and she wanted to join. And we always have a conversation before, mostly to calibrate expectations. And the flip property was in the Tampa, Florida area. And she starts saying, well, hang on a second. So I want to be able to choose the tile, to choose the paint, to choose the cabinets, to choose to be involved in all the details. And I told her right on the spot, I said, listen, what you want to do right now is not going to work. And she says, what do you mean? It's my money. I said, you're absolutely right. It's your money. You'll make any decision, but I'm going to tell you why I am not going to sign up for this, because this is a recipe for failure. You're going to be choosing tiles, paint, etc., being a person in San Francisco for the flavor and what people like. You live in your $2 million home in San Francisco, and you're going to choose for a $250,000 home in Tampa and tell them what to choose. And then what's going to happen is, A, you're probably not going to choose the right thing just because you live there and they live over there. And B, just waiting for your decision about those things will end up delaying it so much, and then you'll be frustrated. It's getting delayed. But guess what? You're never going to say, oh, it's my fault. It's always going to be everybody else's fault. So it's just not going to work. We're very doing in a way, cookie cutters in terms of what people are looking for. We're not trying to be creative. This is not $1 million home that we're flipping in Tampa. We're flipping something, you know, like for 200, 250, whatever, 300 or so. So, and that didn't work out. So that was not a good fit for her, how we operate. Guess what? We didn't end up in, she did not end up working with us on that property. So it's very important that instead of chasing the investment type, ask yourself, what kind of personality or investment fits my personality? And that can change. If you're a beginner and you're taking more of a passive approach because you don't have all the comfort and the confidence, which is fine, maybe after a deal or 2 or 3, you're able to turn and say, you know what, I'm ready to do a flip. I'm ready to do something else, which is fine. And you build the confidence, you build the knowledge, you build you know, maybe the ability to make a smart decision. You know, we always learn, right? It never stops. I have been doing it for 20 years. Do you think I've stopped learning? Just today, I've learned something completely new regarding real estate. Maybe I'm going to talk about it in a moment. Let's see. I have a question here. Okay, I'm going to wait with your question, if you don't mind, to the end, because it kind of probably fits better. I hope you're okay with that. And we're not too far out. A few more minutes and we'll get to the question and conversation section. All right, let's talk about the very challenging aspect of cash flow, especially these days, right? If you're investing if you're looking for cash flow or part of the cash flow, I want to put things in perspective, and I'm hoping it will help you make a smart decision about it and not look at it as black or white. Couple of things about that. In the world of real estate is very traditional that people are either investing for cash flow or either investing for appreciation. I got a little secret to share with you. I'm right there in the middle. I want to have a little bit of a cash flow and a little bit of appreciation. Ideally, not a little bit, but I am very comfortable in being somewhere in the middle. So my investment strategy, if you're asking where I am personally, I am in the middle. There's nothing wrong with being in either side. I just want to say there is another middle ground here. So you can consider combination of those two. Now, I want to tell you how I analyze properties, or at least the methodology of analyzing properties, and you'll see why being in the middle is so important, you know, to emphasize. So when I look at the ROI, I look at the ROI of a rental property. I call it the total ROI. The total ROI is a combination of 3 growth engines or 3 vectors, right? One is the return, the cash on cash. What is the cash of cash? The actual cash flow that I have at the end of the year, you know, compared to the amount I invested in the property. And I'll explain what that amount is in a moment. So cash on cash, rent comes in, all the expenses, and I want to emphasize all the expenses. And the way I teach my clients, my investors, our realtors, everybody in our ecosystem knows how to use our tool, an Excel that I've created about 15 years ago. We've probably analyzed well over 75,000 properties using this Excel. We didn't end up buying 75,000, but we probably analyzed combined 75,000, probably even many more. And this is an Excel. An Excel is something that we can abuse or we can, you know, use correctly, right? And I teach all the realtors and all the agents, and all the investors, you use the Excel the following way. You don't plug in worst case scenario. You don't plug in best case scenario. You use the mindset of realistic case scenario with a little bit conservatism, right? Not horrible, not too much. And what do I mean by that? When I started investing 20 years ago, I would do what's called the worst case scenario. When you do worst case scenario, you know what you get? You get the worst case. You don't do the deal because the worst case looks horrible. You're not going to do it. I have so many deals I regret not doing because no deal passes the worst case scenario. So I couldn't use that. Best case, obviously, we can't use it. It's too optimistic. So then I told myself one day, you know what? Just be realistic. You have enough experience to know what the realistic is, either by checking numbers or things that you can use based on experience, and be a little bit conservative on the top of that, not overly conservative. And we've been using the realistic case scenario with a little bit conservatism, probably for about 15 years, and it worked very, very well. So number one is cash on cash. Number two, appreciation, right? We assume that the property will appreciate on an annual basis over the long term. I buy primarily for long-term buy and hold, and that means that year after year, even if it goes up and down, it tends to go up in value. In my Excel, remember realistic case, I've been using for 15 years, probably 3.5–4% average annual appreciation. In the past 15 years, real estate did more than 4% on average per year, but you know what? I'm okay with 4%. So appreciation is something that I don't ignore, but I don't embrace whatever the market did last year, right? So I'm using it carefully. If you're buying short term and you're using appreciation, and if you're using it aggressively, you may be speculating too much. So make sure you incorporate how you use appreciation, not to expose you too much, but at the same time, I don't ignore it. The third thing is return on equity. What is return on equity? When we measure the cash flow is after monthly expenses. Part of those monthly expenses is the mortgage payment. We mostly buy with the mortgages. The mortgage payments is principal and interest, right? So year after year, slowly, the principal gets reduced. So that means slowly, just by paying, and I'm using the term slowly because typically we pay more interest on the first few years in the monthly payment versus the principal. But I use the term, but still we are paying down the principal slowly. So that means I have gain because of cash flow. I have gain because of appreciation. I have gain because of return of equity. And that's, for me, is the true story of a long-term rental property. And that's how I can evaluate not just the cash flow, but the whole property, right? So now that you understand the concept of both cash flow and appreciation, and how I go about analyzing properties in terms of the total ROI, the next thing I want to do is connect it to our today's environment, lending environment, high interest rate. And I want to say a couple of things about that. I've been doing it for, like I said, for 20 years. I remember before the crash, we were probably doing 7–8%, 9% interest rate, right? So a little bit higher than today. In normal times, right, between booms and COVIDs, interest rate for investment properties were probably around 5–5.5%, give or take, right? Let's just call it 5.5%, right? So when you're looking at today and conventional mortgage, and let's say in today's, let's just call it at the moment for a rounding number, 7% on an investment property, and you're like, oh my God, it's so high. If you're actually having that thought, then I want you to ask yourself, it's very high compared to what? Is it very high compared to zero? Absolutely. Zero is not, it's not an option, so it's not really a good comparison. Is it very high compared to the 3–3.5% we had during COVID? Absolutely. That's a fluke. That's a one-time kind of a thing. That's not something you see common on at all. I've never seen it, not before, and obviously not after, and not before. So that's also even during the bust of the crash of 2000, that were not the interest rate. With an asterisk, there was only one situation that there was, but let's just put that was a very specific situation. So compared to 5.5, okay, that is a little bit more realistic. So you're paying now 1.5% higher than what we want to pay at 5.5, maybe 6%. So that, first of all, gives it a little bit perspective, right? Perspective is important. It's still 7%. No matter what I say, it's still 7%, but at least I'm not like, oh my God, 7% is high. It is high, not extremely high, right? It's just compared to, let's say, 5.5%, 6%. It helps us put things in perspective. The second thing that we started doing in our Excel, it's all related to your working assumption. If you're buying with a mortgage, if your assumption that the mortgage rate will continue to go up, then you can choose, you can buy with points, you can choose a mortgage program based off that fact. My working assumption is that in the next year to three, we will see a reduction in interest rate, not a dramatic reduction, but a reduction. So we plugged in, we updated the Excel and say, hey, we are measuring your, we analyzing it with 7%, but here is the analysis with 6%. And here's how much gain in cash flow you're going to have once we refinance to 6% in the coming years. No guarantee when that will happen. It's just a working assumption. If you don't believe that working assumption, you can just ignore that number altogether. So it's all about trying to put things in perspective and to have a better analysis to help us make a determination, is this useful or a good investment property or not, instead of just putting things in a way, in a black and white kind of a situation where, oh, 7%, 7%, the numbers don't work, pass the deal. Wait, 7%, hang on a second, the numbers don't work, hang on a second. What happens when we lower it? Let's just for a moment look at the analysis at 6%. Oh, 6% is okay, not amazing, okay. So now let's see if there's anything we can do in order to make it work. Maybe I can go back to the seller and say, you know what, too tight for us. It's 7% at this price. If you knock down 10 or 15,000, we can make it happen. Maybe it'll work, maybe not. So those are the type of things that I like to explore in the process of reviewing properties. Is not about just do the numbers work, is very much what do I need to do on my end to make the numbers work. Okay, that's the way I look at things when I'm analyzing them. Okay, I actually feel that we spoke about that in the personality box. I'm skipping to the next one, and I want to finish with this one, and that my last, and then we'll jump into the Q&C. This is for me one of the most, for me, this what I'm gonna tell you about now is maybe one of the most important things or skills or tools you can you should have in order to help yourself be a better investor, a better entrepreneur, probably a better person in life altogether. And that's the skills of asking questions, the skills of asking questions. And I think that personally, as a younger investor, younger person, I always knew to ask questions. I was never shy about asking questions, but I was never really fully using this tool or leveraging this simple tool of knowing to ask questions. And what I trained myself to do is the following, and that's more than 10 years, probably more than 15 years ago. And what I trained myself to do is the following. When I have a conversation coming up with a realtor, a property manager, an attorney, a CPA, I open a notepad and I start putting questions together. I still do it to this day. I start putting my questions together. I just keep it open, and the thought comes or the question comes. I may have a few questions when I just start thinking about it, and maybe in the next hour or the next day or the next few days, here's another question, and I just gather those questions. I train myself to collect those questions so I can become better or more prepared for the meeting. Before the meeting, I will review my questions, make sure I actually know what I wanted to ask, and remind myself maybe something else came. Many times I even send those questions up front, maybe a day before the meeting. I send it over to the attorney, to the CPA, whoever the person is, and I want them to be prepared. I want to make the most out of my time. So if you are not with the skill of knowing to ask questions, or you don't have the habit of collecting questions, and you're coming sometimes to the conversation with like, I'm not in your head. I'm not sure what to ask. You should probably try and work on this simple discipline tool. It's not complicated one. It's kind of very cheap, very easy, and requires a little bit of discipline. But in my experience, knowing to ask questions is probably the best tool that will advance you in life. And I want to give you just an example from today or past 3 days, past few days. We are Wednesday. I think on either the Sunday or Monday, I find this property that's been on the market for 130 days. They're asking 500,000. It's a single family home in the St. Louis, Missouri area, 500,000 on 1 acre. And I'm looking at this, and the agent, the seller's agent says, possibly you can consider looking into this with splitting the lot, right? The lot into others. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. Let me explore that. So I kind of communicate back and forth with the seller's agent, and then I tell him, listen, this is interesting. I'm starting to explore the option of splitting the lot, because that's part of that makes that deal attractive. And I tell him, I also say, you know, can you check if the seller is open for seller financing? And I explained to him that the reason I want seller financing, and I'm looking to do seller financing with putting money down, not like no money down, so they're not intimidated, is because if I go with a conventional mortgage, I will never be able to split the lot into multiple parcels. The lender won't let me do that. It will be a mess, right? So I need someone that I can work with in order to split those lots. And he goes back, like, okay, yes, the seller is actually willing to do, but you have to put 25% down. Okay, 25% down, not a problem. Then I start asking around, what is the process of splitting, and can I split it? And then long story short, just in the past few hours, I was able to communicate with the city planner who told me you can't split that lot. And she gave me the entire explanation why I cannot split that lot. In short, it's a 1 acre with narrow and deep. So the street facing is 100 feet, and it's 475 feet deep. So they won't allow that because they have some regulation and code and whatever. And I'm like, this is a bummer. And then I sit down with myself for a few minutes, and then I write her back and I say, thank you for your answer. I want to have a better understanding from you. I get what you're saying, that I cannot split it in the traditional way. Can I do something different? Can you tell me what other people that you know of did in a similar situation? Any ideas, any suggestions? Can I put a mobile home? Can I put an ADU? Can I build houses on this lot without splitting it, right? So all I did was completely turn the conversation, or just turn how I approach it, because I don't know the answer, but at least I want her to kind of think about it a little bit differently, and maybe she'll come back and say, you know what, I don't know, that was just maybe an hour before we started when I emailed her. She come back, you know what, you can't do this, but you can do the following, and give me some direction. So I don't know if that will turn out, but if you, or if I was just that's not going to work out, I'm moving on to another deal, then absolutely that's something that would not advance this opportunity. So now hopefully she'll come back and say, you can actually do the following, and this will bring this deal back to kind of more attractiveness. So learn how to ask questions. And you know what? This is so important, asking questions, that if you think all the professionals around you have all the answers, you are wrong. The number of conversations I had with attorneys and my CPA about my needs and my questions, only when I started asking more questions and many questions is when the good answers really presented themselves, right? So many times people think, oh, I'll talk to my CPA. If you go to your CPA or your attorney with some general idea, or just review something, or just a general thought, you'll get an answer. But if you come back and say, you know what, let me ask you the following questions regarding this situation or about this property, you'll get many more better answers. All right. Let's see. I think we are done with the content part, and maybe we'll start taking questions. Before I give you this, I want to say that I'll stay here. If you want to have a conversation, I prefer, instead of a Q&A, a conversation. Tell me who you are, what you're doing, what your investment experience. If you feel comfortable, and then we'll be able to make it a little bit more fun, at least fun for me, maybe fun for you, and let the conversation flow instead of just asking your questions. So intro yourself, maybe give your words on what's your experience, and go ahead and ask your question. I'll be very appreciative if you do that. If you have the ability to start your video and actually ask it, or stay with the video, even better. Always nicer to see that it's more than just myself, Mayor, and Zev here, and maybe a few more. Okay, my gift to you guys, three gifts. It's my ebook, which is easy to follow, mainly talks about long-term rentals, very simple and outline, explaining. You can download it. It's a short read, I don't know, 30 pages or so. Easy, simple, a lot of kind of common sense, and based on tons of experience. It's all from the trenches. That's number one. Number two is a list of useful links that I've been kind of gathering over the years. There are 80 links there, probably about 10 or 12 of them are for podcast links, but the rest are different things that I found over the years to be useful for real estate investors. So about 80 links. And then number three is I've curated a list of the top videos that we put together, videos and podcasts. They're not available online for the public. They're hidden. So here's a different about it. There's something related, something on LLCs and how to make smart decisions and things you can ask yourself to be a better investor, and different strategies, different things. That's number three. All those three gifts, we typically sell them for about 40, I think $50. I think we're running a special of $30 right now for you guys. Project X is, for me, it's like an extension from what we're doing here. So you guys get it for free. Just go to the website, which is simplydoit.net/simplydoitgifts, and you use the code Project X and Y for New York, Project X and Y, and you should be paying nothing. If there is something doesn't work, let us know, we'll fix it. But it should be working, or I hope it's working properly, so you can actually benefit from that. Let's see. With that being said, here's my contact information, and I think there were already questions coming. And you know what? I'll also switch to the links of our resources in a moment. Let's just see what we have here. So give me a second. Okay. I'm just reviewing a question here. Okay, all right. I love this question. When a wholesaler offers me a property, I had it today, he offers it for 99,000, ARVs 200K, but I cannot have access to the property, no inspection period, but did see the picture, and the property is currently occupied, but I will get it vacant at closing. There is maybe 20 to 30K in rehab costs. Would I risk and go into such a deal if the numbers make sense? For flip, it's in Indiana. Okay. So first of all, if you understand that, if you heard the question and you have someone else, I am not a wholesaler. I've done purchase from wholesalers. And you have an answer how to tackle this, you're most welcome to share, and either to everybody, or I'll read the answer. Just make sure you're answering the question regarding the wholesaling. I want to tell you a little bit how I have been buying from wholesalers over the years. Okay, and this is my call it Danny's approach for buying from a wholesaler. So let me just emphasize that over my career, I've bought a lot more, mainly MLS on market, off market in a traditional way, like the MLS, just not, on the MLS, but the very traditional process. I've bought packages. Packages is 5, 6, 10, 15 properties or duplexes or something combined. That's a package. I've bought at the auction. The auction is the foreclosure auction, when you actually bid on a property. I've done about 45 of those. I can't remember exactly. And I bought from wholesalers. Now, for me, I don't really care how the property reaches me, where it's the source it's coming from. What I do care is what I'm buying. For the problem I have with wholesalers, and it's not working in my favor, but that's my personal issue with wholesalers for the most part, not all of them. They tell you, here's the property, $2,000 non-refundable, no inspection, no nothing, go, right? Basically what you're telling me here. I have not personally found the property that's worth for me buying without doing some due diligence, okay? So when I don't know if anybody purchased properties at the auction. In a nutshell, when you buy properties at the auction, and I'm talking about live auction or the courthouse steps, when you're actually bidding against others, you buy, you just buy the property as is. That's it. No inspection, no title search, no nothing. Well, not exactly. Every property we've done title search before. Every property before the auction, the team did title search, even the day of the auction, right? To make sure we have no title issues. Then the team did a drive-through. Drive-through means at least see the property from the outside, that it's there. I've been to one auction that I did a drive-through, a beautiful house. When I came to the corner with the corner lot, it was all burned down, right? So if I would have bid of that property without seeing it, it was a burn personally for me in the in the Stockton area, somewhere in Central Valley, California. I went, I did the day before the drive-through, a burned down house. If possible, even go and walk the property, sometimes enter a vacant property from the window. All of those things have happened. You're not supposed to do it, but the teams always find a way how to do that. So at the auction, we've done as much due diligence as possible, right? When I'm buying from a wholesaler, most times they will say, that's it. That's what they're being taught in wholesaler school. $2,000, no inspection, non-refundable, right? I don't like this formula. I will just go back to the wholesaler, say, I'm interested. I need an inspection period. I need it to be refundable. And if he's not willing, I will walk away. If they are okay with what I'm saying, then here's your answer right there. We had a property exactly started in this scenario, but we closed on it maybe 3 weeks ago in St. Louis also. And we were able to compromise with the wholesaler on $500 out of the $2,000 is going to be non-refundable, right? That was we're able. So the investor, my client, risk $500 in case he's walking away and not buying after the inspection. He did end up buying. We knew a lot about these properties. The other thing you can, if you can ask the wholesaler if there is a way for you, he's not giving you the address, to at least have someone walk the property, right? At minimum, have someone walk it, someone knowledgeable walk the property and tell you what's going on. But it's really not an attractive scenario in my personal opinion.
What if I send somebody looking, going around?
Okay, can you please explain again how you handle turnover while tenants are still occupying the property? Yes. So, turns, okay, tenant turns. the trigger for a tenant turn starts 90 days before the tenant move out day or end of lease. 90 days. Why 90 days? Because I want to take my time. 90 days, I want to evaluate what's going on. First of all, remind me what the lease, make sure the dates, check market rent, seeing, kind of get a feel what's happening. Maybe have a conversation with my leasing person about the property. It's more like a 30 days prep. Let's just make sure maybe something I need to do a bit. Okay, so 30 days is just kind of getting warm, warming things up, asking questions, taking our due diligence, taking the time, right? Around 60 days, I'll have the listing agent reach out to the tenant to see what's happening, what's the plan, are they actually moving or not? Let's say they're moving out and they tell us the move out day. During that conversation, when the listing specialist finds out they're moving out, he will coordinate a time to come and do a walkthrough, probably 30 days before they move out, right? Around that time, just, give or take. During that walkthrough, they will assess the condition of the property. They will assess what needs to be done, They're not going to get 100%, right? If they're furnitures, it's hard to see. But you know what? Even with their furniture, you can typically see enough. If they see that the property is in such a poor condition, it's not worth doing much to it until the tenant is completely moved out because a lot of work is needed. We may just say, hey, this one does not qualify in the expressway. This has to go the traditional slow route just because the amount of work that it's required, and it's impossible to assess fully what needs to be done, either because it's so mess or so cluttered or whatever. In most cases, it's able to assess. And at that time, I want the listing agent to have a conversation with the tenant about, okay, here's your move out date. Great. We would like to bring the vendor over to do a quote to kind of before you move out. Is that okay? Typically, yes, right? When you deal with people with respect and you are respectful and courteous and helpful, then they will probably respond in a similar way. Then you say, listen, we want to start showing the house about 10 days-ish before you move out, maybe 2 weeks. Find the time, right? And then try to create an open house, not bother the tenant again and again and again, but more of an open house for them, for people to come in, let's just say on a Sunday between 1 to whatever, something like that. So work with the tenant, find the time, meet the prospective, applicants there. So by the time the tenant moves out, we know what needs to be done. We have the bid in place. Maybe we'll need to adjust it a little bit after they fully move out, but that's okay. It's an adjustment. We have the vendor already negotiated and ready to go and knows the date. We started showing the house, and maybe even processing applicants. Sorry, guys. Let me just fix that. We started showing the house, maybe even processing applicants. That'll be amazing, right? And ideally, we have a tenant who wants to move in and they're just waiting for the turn to take place for whatever. The turn is the time, let's say they need to clean, they need to fix few things, paint few things, etc. So that's the ideal scenario. Not always going to work, but that's what I aspire to do. And in order to do that, I need to kind of start the process of communicating with the tenant probably around 60 days before the lease ends, right? And that's why I take 30 days before to kind of assess what's going on, maybe have a conversation, if initial engagement with the listing specialist. So, and then once I'm, doing the express lane of all those tasks, then if we already have a tenant, an approved applicant, we're just waiting for the house to be available. Maybe we don't need a week. Maybe we just need 4 days and the house is available. Okay, so that's how I tackle it now. Let me know if that is not not, sorry, did not answer fully. Someone is asking for a link here. Let's do that. Give me a second. Link for the gift. 1 second, we'll get there. Everything is a bit slow. And let's see if we can take another question. Would you be able to show your Excel and explain the sheet? Yes, I would be able to show if we have the time. I need to ask the bosses here if that's acceptable to go longer, or you guys decide. I can stay longer, but you guys need to tell me if that's okay. I don't want to be disrespectful.
Dani, absolutely, absolutely, you can.
Okay, here's the link for the gift. Tell me if you are able to see it, everyone. I hope so. And then I am also going to link you if you want the chapter about the property management as well. Okay. The gift sounds like. Oh. All right, let's see what other questions, and then we'll see. We'll circle back to the Excel. What's your trick on finding good deal? What's your trick? First of all, I have a clear definition what is a good deal. So the person who's asking it, do you know what is a good deal for you? What you call a good deal? Most of the investors that I've run into over the years do not know to recognize a good deal when they see one. And I'm not talking about the blown away amazing deal. I'm just talking about good deal. So I have a clear definition what a good deal looks like. For me is single family home, duplex or fourplex, certain age, certain part of town, certain price point, certain cash flow, certain bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, certain schools, right? So if I see something, it meets the threshold. Let's just say 1980, 1,200 square feet, C school. This is just a threshold. That the numbers work. That is already a potentially okay deal, not good deal, okay deal. If anything exceeds that, my qualification, what I call a qualified property, then by all means, it's even better. Okay, so if it's not 1,200, but it's 1,500 or 1,750, and it's 2,000, and it's B schools, and the numbers still work, I just took my qualify or my threshold deal, and I made it a qualified deal, right? Assuming everything else works in terms of location and proximity to urban nuisance and the numbers. It has to work with the numbers, of course. Okay, hang on. Let me see here. I'm trying to open in Excel. So you guys bear with me. Thank you for your patience. By the way, if you don't mind kind of introducing yourself, like maybe what's your experience, that'll be really, really nice. I see that you're still here and I'm the only one who's conversing. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to find an Excel to show you. So give me a moment. Okay, let's try and see if this one works. Okay, while it's opening up, I'll see if there are more questions. What numbers for a good deal? What's your ROI? I'll show that in a moment. On the Excel, when you search for property, do you zoom in on certain neighborhoods? Yes, I like to be in A, B, and C type of neighborhoods. That's my preference. Most of the properties we buy are B, I would say, but I'm okay with C. I want to make sure it's over a certain age or year built. I want to make sure it's not sitting right next to a highway, not right next to a local utility, not like thing that they sometimes have in the neighborhoods, a utility cluster like the generators. I want to make sure it's not backing to a commercial or industrial building. It could, but I'm going to be a little bit suspicious. So I like really, you guys, I love the American dream. The American dream for me, it's a single family home in a nice community, in good schools that attract they attract a family with the kids and the dog in a very typical neighborhood. So houses that are scattered not in a neighborhood. I'm not really a big fan of that. I mean, unless it's in a neighborhood, but it's more maybe spacious. Houses that are just your upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class type of neighborhood. That's the type of properties I like to look for, the type of properties that we normally buy. So that's kind of how we go about. Those are the type of properties. I'm going to show you one. I would call it probably an A kind of property. Hang on a second. It's coming up. Okay. All right. So Excel, let's go and check the Excel. Give me a moment to share my screen. I'm going to do it briefly because it can be a little bit, can be challenging for the first time. Let's see if I can. Okay. So this is our analysis Excel. This is a property that we considered. I think it's no longer available. Maybe it is, but it's no longer available. This is over here. We have the property details. So it's 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, built in 2017. It's actually on the bigger side, 2,300 square foot, 2-car garage, small, okay lot, a bit small. And we measure schools. What we started doing about a year ago, instead of using ABC, we just match up all the numbers. So we say it's a, does it say here? So like it's 7. Sometimes you see it's one school is rating is 6, one school rating is 7, and one school rating is 8. We just add them up, and we want to be out of 30. So 10, 10, 10, 10 rating for elementary, middle, and high. Each 10 would be 30. That's the best school. So we want to be as close to 30. Probably anything over 13 is okay for us. This 125 is a top school in that respect. We have what they're asking, actually what they told us they will probably accept, what the market value. We provide a suggestion what offer to put, and then this one tells us which offer are we going to use for the analysis. Then we do an estimate how much make ready it will require for this property. In this case, between 6,500 to 8,500. And that's where I said, we want to be conservative or cautious. I think in this case, it's going to be less than even 6,500, but we just want to be sure we're not skipping on something. It's a relatively new home, not completely new, but not a very old home. Probably it looks to be in good shape. We're probably going to be less than 5 for this one, just for touch-ups. Estimated closing costs, estimated mortgage costs, points if we typically have, and the total cost of this property. This is interesting. It's been on the market since June of 2023, which is almost 280 days. Well, you guys, I'm not sure if it's still available, but just assume We looked at it about 2-3 weeks ago, so it's not that old. 30% down is the sweet spot that we're using today for mortgages. That tells us the down payment, how much is financed, what interest rate we have. I don't know if it's the exact what we have today, but maybe when we were putting this Excel together, that was the rate. Mortgage 30 years, monthly mortgage payment 1,362. And this tells me, by the way, and this is an important figure, how much will I need out of pocket to buy this property. So it's mainly the down payment, but it's also some make ready and some additional expenses. So I call this not how much the down payment is, but how much money would I need in order to get to the point that the house is ready for a renter. Okay, so very important to understand, because that's our baseline for the ROI. If, remember I told you earlier, if we refinance, or when we refinance to 6%, that will add an additional $103 a month to our cash flow. Okay, let's put it as a mental note aside. We estimate the rent, right? Obviously you can see it's monthly and yearly. What are the property taxes, insurance, repairs, property management fee, this percentage and fee. Leasing fee is the fee to pay. It's the monthly representation of a leasing fee, not the actual leasing fee. It's not an accounting system that will to list the property. HOA if we have some vacancy, and then we have the total fixed expenses and everything combined, the expenses and the mortgage. We scroll down here and we look at what I call the deal attractiveness. And I want to explain to you something before we dive into the numbers. In the background, what you don't see is this Excel actually takes all the assumptions that we have up here, that we made here on the numbers and here, and all the fixed assumptions that we have down here, such as the annual rent increase, the annual increase in expenses, annual appreciation, and it stretches all those numbers in the background over 30 years. So you got year 1, year 2, year 3, year 30, and every year it analyzes exactly the performance. What is the rent? What is the expenses? Based on those assumptions, of course. What is the mortgage? How much we paid for equity, or how much we gain in equity, how much we gain in appreciation every single year in the background, right? It's messy. You don't want to, it's not a fun place to visit. And then what we take out of those 30 years, and we do periodic averages. What is the performance of this property, in the first 5 years, the first 10 years, the first 15 and 20 years. So then we can see that this property in 5 years, the cash flow is 11,500, right? With all the assumption that cash, the rent goes up a little bit and the expenses go up a little bit. So this is how much we gain in cash flow in 5 years. This is how much we gain in a little bit of appreciation of 4%. You can see over here. Sorry, 4%. And the gain from paying down the mortgage principal. So that means in 5 years I've gained, rounding up, $95,000, which is almost 100% of my investment, right? It's close, but not exactly. So in 5 years. And I have been, like I said earlier, those are not optimistic numbers. This is probably a little bit below what we think this house can collect. Probably, I would say, if we were just 100% realistic, it will probably be $100 more for each one. So we are a little bit careful about that. And then we have the average cash flow per year in the first 5 years. It's average per year in the first 5, $2,300, right? Which is also almost $200 a month. You ask for the ROI. The ROI based on all what I told you here and the baseline, which I've mentioned the baseline here, the 105, is per year 18% ROI, which is very common with the properties that we are considering. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. If you're thinking 18% a year, are you crazy? Yes, I am. But if you understand why I'm crazy, then you understand how I get to 18%. Remember, it's this. Or it should be this, but it's not showing. It's what I showed you earlier, the total ROI, the appreciation a little bit, the return on equity by paying down the mortgage principal, and the cash flow, right? The three growth engine. So that's how we get to the ROI per year in the first 5. Obviously, you can see the ROI goes up as we go over the years. This is the estimated value of the property in the period, right? Estimated. This is an Excel. This is not a guarantee. This is only based on a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and very comfortable with the numbers. I would say 90% of our clients are reporting that the cash flow is better than the Excel, but not dramatically better. So it's not like when I tell you here, it's 200 a month. They're probably going to get, in reality, many times we say, you know what, they got to 250, they got to 265, 75. It's not 400, right? It did happen that it turned out to be 400, but we also had a situation where it went down to 100 just because the market changed and the actual rent was a little bit below what we anticipated. We also have sometimes beginner investors that are so nervous, they're probably going to get the first applicant, even if it's 200 below market. They just want to get the house rented, and a year later, they're starting to really come back to the numbers that we're talking about. So those are the numbers, how we evaluate them. Over here, someone said, how do you define a good property? We created this little tool that we say anything you put here is my personal criteria. So I want school to be at least 14, at least 1,000 square feet, at least 3.2. In 1970 and after, cash flow is to 125, and the ROI 15%. This one, it crosses all of those, obviously. So for me, when I see all of those favorable, I should definitely consider that property. Now I want to show you. Let's just say, sorry, just for the sake of showing you, if I change those things, you can see that this property, I want 3 bedrooms. It's insufficient. I wanted 1970 and after, it's 1960, insufficient. Insufficient doesn't mean no, it just says think about it. Okay, my rule of thumb, if I have 3 insufficients, I call it like 3 strikes, but I also have to consider what do I mean by insufficient. So let me show you what is why do you have to make a judgment call and not stick to Excels. Let's just call it 1.5, and we're going to call this 1968. Okay, so you can see right away that I have 2 insufficients, right? But is it really? I mean, it's only 2 years and it's only half a bath. So is it really something I would rule out? No. Okay, but if I have a lot of insufficiency or very far from what I want to be, then I would probably use this tool to say, you know what, this is not a good fit, toss it out, move on to the next one. Okay, so hopefully you guys, that's the fastest I ever show the Excel. Usually it takes much more time. Let me see if we have any more questions. For all of you who are asking for the Excel, embrace yourself. It's not a free tool. It's either for purchase, I think it's $150 for purchase, or our clients get it for free as part of working with us. So this is not something we share just with everybody. You got to be either a client or to purchase it. I hope you can understand that. Many hours and effort went into providing something like this, and we keep improving it all the time. Okay. What's the best method to work with an investor partner on a hold rental deal? What's the best way to work with an investor partner on a hold rental deal? Well, tricky one. If you're buying cash and you're putting the property under both of your name, that makes it easier. If one of the buyers is going to be the one who's taking the mortgage and the other one is not going to be on the mortgage or on title, then you have to, or maybe I should say, when you have two partners, and if you are considering a mortgage, the partner with the worst financial profile or credit profile will dictate the terms of the mortgage. So if you are amazing borrower and the friend is not an amazing borrower, and you both go on title and on the on mortgage, then the friend with the not good credit will dictate the terms to you. So in a way, screwing up the terms, so to speak. Now, if you are doing it in a way that you are the one who's buying and getting a mortgage, and because you have the better one, that's easier, that's simpler. In any event, my suggestion is the following. I think the most important thing is to air out the details with the friend or investor and have a conversation. And I call it the what if conversation. I'm using the term friend or investor because sometimes we actually want to do deals with someone who's close to us one way or another. So air out. I'm going to take the mortgage. You're not getting a mortgage. Maybe because of that, I should be getting a little bit more percentages, even though if we put equal amount, maybe just something to think about. And then what if one wants to sell and the other one wants to keep? What do? I don't have the answer, but you got to discuss those things and write them down. And what if we need more money and one doesn't want to put in or one doesn't have? How do we decide when to sell? So you got to go through multiple scenarios of what ifs and discuss them. What I tell my clients when they are working usually with a friend or partner, I say, listen, tell them I told you have to have the talk, because sometimes there's a lot of like people don't always feel comfortable having that conversation, unpleasant conversation. It's a very important conversation. It's a small inconvenience that will save you tremendous inconvenience in the future. And you write those things down and you even sign. You can even take it to a partnership agreement with an attorney, not a problem. But if you just want to keep it simple, have the conversation and say, hey, we got to review those things. I heard this guy talk and he said it's a must do. And don't try to perfect it. What you're trying to do is review, discuss, talk, agree on multiple what ifs, right? Make it 10, make it 20 of them, 5, whatever. And then what you will end up having is the spirit of the agreement, because you're not going to be able to cover every scenario. But at least you have talked to many of them. You also make sure you're comfortable working together. And then you are you have something in writing that kind of says, here's the spirit of the agreement. So for the person who asked this question, if that's what you're asking for, and I think I was able to answer, great. If not, please kind of rewrite your question or explain better. I'll be happy to address. Why is a fourplex your maximum? Great question. Two main reasons. Anything over 4 doors, it's commercial lending. Commercial lending and not residential lending, worse terms. You're going to probably put a larger down payment, possibly not entirely, most likely a higher interest rate. Very likely that it won't be 30-year amortization, maybe 30-year amortization or 25 or 20 with an exit along the way. So the terms of the mortgage are going to be dictating a lot. And we are already in a challenging environment of interest rate. So I want simple. I want the best terms. I beg my lenders, give me a 40-year mortgage, right? I'm okay with that if we can. So the main reason is lending has to do a lot with it. The second reason, which has nothing to do with lending, normally the more units, doors you have in the property, the harder it's going to be to really gather the information about the property. Meaning, if you have, even when I work with fourplexes, milking out the information. What are the rents? What's the security deposit? Which one is leased? What was done to the property? What needs to be done? No, oh my God, so much effort on a 4 units, and it's almost common practice that some of the information they have, a lot of it they don't, and it just slows everything down. It just delays everything down. And I'm just talking about preliminary information to get to the point, okay, we're ready to make an offer. The preliminary due diligence before the pre-offer due diligence. A lot of energy there. If you have 5 units, it's going to add to that challenge. Rarely do I find an owner that is, or an agent that are well organized. It does happen. And they say, here you go. They may not have everything, but they'll have 90% available, right? And then that will make it, like, oh, okay, I can definitely see what's going on, and I can better evaluate in a rent roll. And here's a list of things that we repaired over the years. Great. Those are so rare to find. So you'll see that the more units you have, the more mess it usually is, and the more time, energy, etc. it takes to gather the information. And I'm talking about probably up to 20, 25, 30 units. At that point, usually people are getting more professional accounting, CPA, business operation, and all of a sudden they're more, maybe, the information is more available in a clear to understand kind of a way, which is not common with the 4, 5, 6, etc. Okay, you're asking, I bring the deal and he brings the money. There is no, you know what? There is no one way to go about it. There's only what makes sense to both of you. Okay. Don't try to, I would say, don't ask what's acceptable. Go back, who cares what's acceptable? What is it? What makes sense to you? Really, what makes sense to you? The person who brings the deal, and does it make sense with the person who brings the money? And find that middle ground instead of trying to find out what is acceptable, so to speak. I know it's maybe not the answer that you're looking for, but sometimes just trying to stick to a formula, in my opinion, why? Find your own formula. Makes the justification, and has to do with how much effort you're putting in. What happens maybe after the property is purchased? Are you involved, not involved? Maybe you want to build it in a way that, what, I'll find a deal, I'll get something up front, maybe percentages in the property, or if it exceeds what we are planning and doing better, I'll get a bonus on that. So example, I've never seen people do that. I'm sure people do. Here's an option for you to do something a little bit better, that it's a win-win. Okay. So hopefully you're okay with my answer, even if it's not specifically what you're asking for. All right, let me see. You guys, you're amazing. I can't believe there's so many people still here so late. Maybe okay, we'll take the last question. Are you not buying with cash? Absolutely buying with cash all the time. Cash is an option, right? My favorite thing to do is delayed financing. Do you guys know what delayed financing is? All right, delayed financing. Delayed financing is actually, if you have the ability to buy cash, you can go to the lender and get a mortgage. So you have the option of both. You go to the lender, say, I want to do delayed financing, meaning delayed financing is buying with a mortgage, but in 2 steps. Step number 1, cash offer, cash purchase, and close on cash, right? Why do we do that? To make our offer more attractive, to close sooner, to maybe be aggressive with the price offer. The seller is like, if I'm doing a cash offer, maybe they'll give you a better discount or a lower price, right? So there is a reason why to do that. There is another reason, I'll talk about it in a moment. And then right after closing, instead of doing refinance, what we typically do with financing, we call a term called delayed financing. You're actually bringing the financing within 3 weeks or 2 to 3 months after closing. It will only factor in the purchase price. It's not going to be market value. You know, let's say you bought a property for 200,000, it's worth 250. They don't care. You have to season the property. It has to wait, I think now a year until they can take market value and not the purchase price, but they will factor in proved expenses. So if you pay $15,000 and you can prove an invoice, a wire, a payment, everything, they're really, really strict about it. They'll say, you know what, you bought it for 200 and you spent 15,000, we'll factor it as 250,000, assuming it passes appraisal. And the reason you would do delayed financing and call it delayed financing and not a refinance is because the terms of the delayed financing are better than the terms of refinance. Right? That's the nuance that you have to understand. So what do? You make a cash offer, and in parallel, you already work with your lender on everything in order to have them ready. So you don't you're almost like you're saying, I'm buying with a mortgage, but just at the moment of closing, you're just like, hey, pause on the mortgage. I'll see you in a week. Close on cash, bring the mortgage after in a delayed financing kind of a setting, and that will help you get similar term to buying to the purchase to the buying purchase, also the buying mortgage versus refinance. Refinance, remember, especially when you pull money out, even if you just bought a house a month ago, the terms are not going to be as attractive as purchase mortgage, right? That's the nuance. It's important to understand. The second situation, we'll use delayed financing. Let's just say the house will not pass an appraisal. I don't know if you know that, but a house that doesn't, you know, in order to obtain conventional mortgage, the one that we mostly desire with the better terms, then the house needs to be inhabitable, usable, livable. The AC needs to work. The heating needs to work. It has to have floors, right? Carpet or flooring. You cannot have a house, a lender, an appraiser will not approve or will not approve a house that the living room is without a carpet and you can see the subfloor. Not approved. The appraiser will not approve a house when there is a big hole in one of the walls or the ceiling, right? Even though it's an easy fix, not approved, right? I'm not talking about the fist size kind of a hole. I'm talking about something big. So even little stuff can affect the appraisal. But let's just say we have a house with no floors, just no floors. Something got wet and all the carpets were pulled out. Not gonna pass appraisal. How much are we gonna need for floors after we buy the house? Let's just say 2 days and $4,000 and carpets is installed, right? So we close on a Monday. We get the carpet person there on Tuesday. By Friday, it's already completed. Delayed financing now can come in and say, hey, no problem, right? Just the fact that you needed to delay the financing, not a problem. So delayed financing, it's a mechanism to combine cash ability, but still stick with or stay with the mortgage. I don't understand the question here. Do you need this delayed financing if you buy? No. Delayed financing is only if you want to keep the property with a mortgage and not keep it with cash. If you're doing cash and you're buying cash and you want to keep it cash, forget about everything I said about delayed financing. I just talked about the combination of delayed financing and cash, if you want to do that. Can I do delayed financing if I take hard money loan on the property? I think that will be considered a refinance, almost certain, because there's already a mortgage on the property and not delayed financing. So my guess, if it's a recorded lien loan on the property, very likely it will be considered a refinance. And you are most welcome to talk to a lender to verify. I don't want to provide you wrong information. All right, you guys, we are almost 10 p.m., right? I'm going to wrap it up. I know there's more coming. I'm going to wrap it up because it's already 10 p.m. I want to thank you for having me, for inviting me, for the questions. Hopefully, we can do that again. I really hope you guys have benefited. On a personal level, I'll tell you that my little kick is when people write back now or later in an email, say, hey, Danny, we enjoy. If you didn't enjoy, don't write. Only if you enjoyed or benefited. No, I'm just joking. Either way, just, to know that it was received. I like that, when you talked about delayed financing, I really like that, something like that. That's just, for someone who's just, spitting out info, to get a feedback is always nice to have for my position. So if you're kind enough to do that, that would be appreciative. But altogether, thank you. Have a terrific resto. Have a good night. I'm going to join my family for dinner now. Thank you very much for having me.
Danny, thank you so much. I promise you we will invite you again. I promise you.
A pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Danny.
everyone. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.